especially when this relationship is in doubt. So even if you have that old picture, go look for them. See, the pictures from back in the days when they were babies, when they were a toddler, they speak volumes, okay? And because sometimes we think that those things don't matter, but they do. They do. Okay, so when you're going for the interview, make sure that anything that shows this is my child, this is my son, this is my daughter, bring all of those things in addition to the birth certificate. Hello, welcome to Ofoe TV. My name is Ikuya. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you have not subscribed, please make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook. Those of you who have already done that, thank you so much. Today we are going to talk about DNA testing, okay? And the things that trigger DNA testing. All right. So DNA testing is a scientific test that is done to establish blood relationship between visa applicants on a particular case. Okay. Now the key word here is relationship. All right. So when it comes to DV lottery, for somebody to have beneficiaries, they are connected through a relationship, either through marriage, either through bloodlines, which is your biological children, or either through legally adopted children, or either through another marriage, children that you gain out of marriage. All right. So in all of these instances, it is all about relationships. And so when you go for the interview, it is important that you establish this relationship. You provide evidence to establish this relationship. All right. Now, when you go for an interview and you are unable to establish this relationship, then DNA testing could be triggered, especially when it comes to the children on this case. Of course, they are not going to do DNA testing on your wife because there's no blood relationship between you and your wife or you and your husband, right? But your children, okay, they could request for DNA testing. So now let's go into some of the things that could trigger DNA test request. Now you've already heard the point that I'm just going to talk about. The main thing that could trigger DNA test request is if you have little to no evidence to substantively establish the relationship between the principal applicant and the children, or the relationship between the children and the spouse of the principal applicant. So it's not just about the principal applicant. It can be finding the link between the children and the principal applicant's spouse. All right. So the most important thing here is evidence. If you don't have enough evidence to establish this relationship, then obviously DNA testing is the only way to conclusively determine the blood relationship. All right. Now, there are some secondary reasons that could also add on to the primary reason. Remember, the primary reason is when you have little to no evidence to establish the relationships. Okay? So, now let's go to the secondary reasons. So one of the secondary reasons that could trigger DNA testing is when there's little to no resemblance between the children and the principal applicant, or the children and then the spouse of the principal applicant. All right. I know many of us, we don't even look like our parents. Some of us, we look like a morph of our mother and our father. All right. And then there's some people that just don't look at any of their parents. Okay. That is why I said this is a secondary reason. So if your children do not look like you, they don't look like your spouse, and then you don't have enough evidence to establish that these are your children, then definitely DNA testing could be requested. Okay? Now the other, which is a very big secondary reason, the big secondary reason is when children are added to the case after the DV lottery has been won, okay? And I'm talking about children that were born before applying for the lottery, okay? Now, there are instances where you can add children who are already alive during the registration, but you did not have the relationship with them to include them, okay? Let's say that you won the lotto and you have, you got married to somebody with children, or let's say that after winning the lottery you adopted children, right? Now, when you are claiming that these children are your stepchildren or the children are your adopted children, if the consular officer is not convinced that you are telling the truth, then they could use DNA testing request to kind of remove all the doubts, okay? If the consular officer is not convinced that the children are your stepchildren, if the consular officer is not convinced that the children are your adopted children, however, if they believe that those children are your true biological children, but you are just here to lie to them, then the consular officer could request for DNA testing, because that will really show them that those children are indeed yours. Okay, so the DNA testing can be used to show that somebody is your child, and it could be also used to show that somebody is not your child. All right, but remember, the most important thing is evidence. If you don't have enough evidence to establish the relationship between you and the children on a particular case, okay? Now, for the child who is your stepchild, if the consular officer really believes that the child is not yours, then of course they are not going to ask you to do DNA testing, right? But if they believe that the child is yours, but you are lying right now to them that that child is your stepchild, or that child is your adopted child, then they could request the DNA testing so that they can eliminate, the doubt. They can remove all the doubts. All right. Now, these are the main reasons, but there could be more. But as I said before, this is not a common thing in DV lottery for obvious reasons, which is the time limitation. So if you're somebody who is going through the DV lottery and you have children, it is important that you make sure that you bring enough evidence to show the relationship between you and the children. Like if you're a mom, if you're a dad, and you're going for interview with your children, then you need to bring any evidence that any parent should have. You should have evidence that any true parent will have. Now, I know not everybody's parent may have pictures of their children, but every parent has something, okay? Whether it's pictures, whether it is school report card, whether it is baptismal certificate, whether it is school enrollment, there is something, weighing card, right? Prenatal care, postnatal care, something that shows that they are your parent. I know you're thinking about birth certificate. Birth certificate is good, but you need more, especially when this relationship is in doubt. All right? So I hope that these tips that I provided for you will be in the back of your mind as you prepare for interview in order to avoid this situation. So even if you have that old picture, go look for them. See? The pictures from back in the days when they were babies, when they were a toddler, they speak volumes, okay? And because sometimes we think that those things don't matter, but they do. They do, okay? So when you're going for the interview, make sure that anything that shows this is my child, this is my son, this is my daughter, bring all of those things in addition to the birth certificate, okay? So guys, I hope this helps you, right? All right, guys, if you have watched this video to this point, Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. Make sure that you have subscribed before you leave here, and then you share this video with your friends and family, so that if somebody finds themselves in this situation, whether they are DV lottery winner or they are immigrant visa applicant, I'm talking about the petition based immigrant visa applicants and their children involved, this is something that could happen to them too, so that they can prepare ahead of time. Okay, but guys, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. I love you, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye bye.